In order to finish off our conversation about working with the crop tool, here in this movie, we'll take a look at 3 brief projects. In the first project, we'll work with this image, and I want to talk about the subjective nature of cropping and how that recomposes the frame. Next, we'll move to another image. Here, we'll talk about cropping. I also want to share with you a tip for how you can rotate your crop, say from vertical to horizontal and vice versa. And last but not least, I'm going to share with you a technique which can help you to compare and contrast the results of cropping the image. All right, well, let's begin with image number 1. Here, I'll press the C key to select the crop tool. Then when I click on one of my corner points, one of the things that you'll notice here, let me zoom in so you can see this, is that the rule of thirds line is above the eyes. And when that tends to happen in a portrait, we tend to kind of look down on the image. So rather than that, what I want to do is actually recompose the frame and bring this down even lower, then double click in order to apply that. Now, sometimes what you can do too is you can make a crop like that and then zoom in on the image like I'm doing here and realize, you know what? I actually think I want to crop out even more of the frame. So I'll go ahead and go over here. I'm just going to crop out some more of the top of the frame and maybe a little bit underneath. And in this way, we'll double click and then zoom in so you can see the image. We're now really up close to the subject. Now, the whole point of this is just to raise the topic of this idea that when you crop, you're recomposing the image. You're changing the mood, the emotion, the balance of the overall image. Now, there's no right or wrong here. Really, it's up to you as an artist to decide. But I did want to at least bring that up so you can start to think about how you might crop and recompose, not just to straighten stuff out, but to change the look and the feeling of a photograph. All right, well, that was mini project number 1. Let's move to the second one. Here, I'll go ahead and close this file. And for our second one, we're going to look at this picture that I captured in another one of my courses. It was a 5-day photography challenge. It's a ton of fun. You may want to check it out. Anyway, we got Owen out in the ocean standing on this ladder. And obviously, it isn't level, so I'll select the crop tool, use the straighten tool, and I'll just begin by leveling this out. Now, currently, we can see that he is below this rule of thirds line. So in a way, we're looking a little bit down on him, maybe straight towards him, but a touch down. Yet, if we drag this down so that he is now above that rule of thirds line, let me double click to apply the crop to show you what I mean. The feeling of the image is now we're almost going from the bottom of the frame, looking in up towards him. And the only difference is the crop. The camera position stayed the same. So again, as we crop and recompose, it really is changing our perspective. Next, I want to talk about how you can actually rotate the crop orientation. You can see that it is currently horizontal, yet if you tap the X key on your keyboard, that flips it to vertical. So the X key allows us to rotate back and forth between vertical and horizontal. And sometimes this can be a good way to kind of test out an idea, saying, hey, maybe this image would work with a crop like this. Well, here with this photograph, I think we lose a little bit of the drama. I don't like it so much. So I'll reactivate the crop, press the X key, and then, of course, determine how I want to crop this. I want him to be nice and tall in the frame, and then I'll double-click to apply it. And then you want to zoom in, right, to be able to evaluate the image and make sure you like your new composition. All right, well, that was mini project number 2. Let's move to our third and final project for this movie. Here we have a project of one of my friends who's a yoga instructor. It's sunrise, it's a beautiful day. We need to straighten this out. So I decide I'll use the straighten tool as we've seen before. You can see how handy that tool is. Then I'm just going to double click to apply that crop. That's the crop just sort of straight out of using the straighten tool. There it is. But after having done that, let's say that you want to experiment with maybe another way to crop the image. Well, here's a great technique for that. Go to the image pull-down menu, then choose duplicate. What this will do is it will duplicate the file. Click OK. And you can now see how I have 2 tabs of the same exact image with the same exact crop. Now, one nice way to arrange this is to go to Window and Arrange and choose 2 up vertical because these are vertical images. So here we have these 2 images side by side. I'll go ahead and select the zoom tool. I want to zoom all the windows and I want them to fit in the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure we're at the same exact view for both images. Now, with this one over here on the right, I want to experiment. So I'll grab my crop tool And I'm just going to click and drag this in a little bit. Maybe I want a crop where she is just centered and she's a little bit higher in the frame. And then I'll double click to apply that. Then we'll go back to the zoom tool. Just like we've seen before, we can use zoom all windows, and I'm going to say fit in screen. So now we have two different versions of the same exact image. And sometimes I find it's helpful to have these side by side like this because it can help me decide, hey, you know what? I actually kind of like the one on the right a little bit better with a modification. So I'll grab my crop tool, and I think she's just a little bit too tall in the frame, and I'll bring this down a little bit and then double click and apply it right there. Now, after having decided that, of course, you want to go back to your range. And here I want to consolidate all to tabs so I can look at one image by itself and say, yeah, is this it? Is this the look that I like? Or is this it? Is this the look that I like? And so you want to make that decision based on which one you like the best. And then, of course, after you've done that, you can save out the file or continue with your workflow.